Hi, friends. So glad you could join us for another one of our student ministry lesson videos. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about things that are lost and how they get found again. Specifically, we've been talking about what we do when we feel a little lost. And sometimes we feel lost because we don't feel noticed or seen. Maybe we just don't feel valued. And maybe we know we've messed up and we're just not sure how to fix it. Well, today we're going to hear the story of a young man who lost everything because of his mistakes and how we are sometimes a lot like him. It's the parable of the prodigal son in Luke chapter 15. And just to recap, Jesus was telling these stories that we've been going through to help the Pharisees, the religious rulers, know how they were wrong about themselves, how they were wrong about others, and God. So we're going to look at what Jesus is trying to communicate with this third story. So in the Gospel of Luke chapter 15, verse 11, it says, Jesus continued, there was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. I think we can all probably find some things that we have in common with this son. He imagined he could do whatever he wanted to do, spend his money and have fun. He could find everything he thought he was missing out on. And I think we can assume he would have been pretty broken at this point. Because of his bad decisions, he had essentially told his father he didn't care about him anymore and he was leaving. And he lost everything. Well, I'm sure he found himself disconnected from others and from God. Well, he was probably filled with shame and guilt about what he had done and fear about what he needed to do next. And I'm sure that's something we can all relate to. I know I can. So he was desperate. He decided to go home, but not as a son, but just hoping to become a servant in his father's house. As I read this next part, picture how you would feel. We're going to jump back in the story in verse 20. So he got up and went to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. What a response that was from the father. Can you imagine being welcomed home like this? After wasting his money, disgracing his father, and bringing shame on himself and his family, his father is still filled with love and compassion for him. The father runs to his son to hug and kiss him. The father didn't just allow the son to move back home, he forgave him completely. He welcomed him home. And remember, Jesus told this story to help us discover something important about who God is. And just like the father in Jesus's parable, God is so kind and loving and patient with us when we wander away from him or when we make mistakes. God is not angry and waiting to, list off all the things that we've done wrong when we mess up and wander away. God is like this loving father who is ready to welcome us home. So when you've made decisions and mistakes that have led you far from God, I hope you'll remember what the son in this story discovered about his father, that when you feel lost, Jesus welcomes you back. And so we can make a decision. Do we stay far from God or do we come to him? And I hope today that's what you would decide, is to come back to your father who is going to welcome you back to the family.